welcome to the True Nosh Kitchen. I am Renee and I'm going to be teaching you guys how to make a gluten-free, sugar-free, and vegan egg tart. So a lot of people are allergic to gluten because of celiac disease or gluten sensitivity. I don't use any sugar in my cooking. I'm a registered dietitian in Vancouver, BC, Canada. And I love sharing recipes and I love cooking and I love eating. And a lot of people are asking me, well, how can I do egg tarts without eggs? So I've gotten a lot of ideas and how to create something that looks like an egg tart and tastes kind of like an egg tart, but we don't need to use eggs, and the whole process is going to be vegan, sugar-free, as well as gluten-free. So if you guys are just getting on Facebook right now, you can get your ingredients together. I've emailed everyone who's signed up and donated to this class a list of ingredients to get, and I'll give you some time to go and get those ingredients together. Those of you who didn't get the email, you can e-transfer your donation to truenosh@gmail.com, and we can always email you the ingredients and measurements after this class. You can watch this video anytime, and we're happy to answer any questions after the video. You can post your comments on the comment section, but I'm only doing this myself, so I'm trying to concentrate on teaching the recipe. And after the class, I will answer everyone's questions by typing in the comment section. If you forget after the class is over, you can always message me on Facebook and I'll try to get you that answer as soon as I can. All right, so let's start with preheating the oven. I have my oven preheated at 200 degrees Celsius, okay? And we're gonna let that preheat and get to temperature. And in the meantime, we're gonna go and get the tart shell ready. So this is more of like a cookie tart shell instead of a puff pastry tart shell for egg tarts. Egg tarts is one of my favorite dim sum and pastry treats to get. Well, my parents are from Hong Kong and I grew up just eating egg tarts all the time. Then my father had diabetes, so I started to cook without sugar. And then after he passed away, my family also, decided that they're going to become healthier. And then I decided to become a dietitian and help people who are like me, trying to help others. And we create recipes without using sugar and trying to increase fiber and protein. And then my partner a year and a half ago, and he's celiac, so I decided to also increase my knowledge with gluten-free recipes. And so some ingredients we're going to talk about today. So we have some almond flour. If you don't have almond flour, you can do coconut flour. I have both, just to change it up if you can. So either almond flour or coconut flour is fine for this recipe. I have some dates here. These are Dietitian Nord dates. And I've talked about some of the different types of dates that you can use. There's medjool dates, there's Dietitian Nord. I like Dietitian Nord dates because they're a little smaller. They have a little bit more fiber than medjool dates because they're smaller and there's more surface area that's covered by the peels. So there's a little bit more antioxidants on here. And it's less sweet, which means it's got less potential to increase your blood sugar because it's got more fiber, it's got less sweetness in here, and it's just a little bit better for those who are trying to normalize their blood sugar. Well, obviously, if you just eat a date, it's still going to increase your blood sugar, but we're going to mix it with some oil, some salt, and a little bit of almond flour and some water. So we're going to go ahead and get either your blender or your food processor, and I'm going to put about half a cup of dates. So you should just eyeball this half cup. I have 1 cup here, so just half of the cup all the dates go into your food processor. And I'm going to also use about a quarter cup of water. So here we are, this quarter cup of water. Okay, so with that, I'm going to add a little pinch of salt. So those of you who are joining us can always rewind the video if you missed a few steps. And this video will be kept on my Facebook, and you can review this anytime. So I have a pinch of salt and a quarter cup of water and half a cup of dates. And almond flour also goes in here. So actually what I'm going to do first is to blend the dates. And then I'm going to mix it with the almond flour. Okay, so the dates go in. And then we also have a little bit of cooking oil. I forgot to put that in. So another quarter cup of cooking oil goes in here. And I just need a little bit more. I'm going to use a little bit of the flax oil that I have. Flax oil is a little bit more yellow. Okay, so adding that to the processor or the blender, and then the dates go in and all of them get blended together. You want the dates to be very, very blended and look like a smoothie by the end of the blending. Great. So it's going to look like a paste. That's exactly how we want to get our this as a base for mixing in our almond flour or our coconut flour. I'm going to get a mixing bowl. I'll be right back. All right. Get your mixing bowl, and you're going to get a spatula to take out all the paste from your blender and put it in the mixing bowl. All right, so make sure that you scrape it all in. This is key to your tart shell. Okay, now everything is scraped in. You can now get your almond flour. So we need a cup and a quarter of almond flour. And if you don't have enough almond flour, you can substitute with some coconut flour. So we only have about 3/4 of a cup. So these two are interchangeable, the almond flour and the coconut flour for me. I actually prefer the coconut flour because it's got some coconut flavors to it, and I really like coconut. For those of you who don't like coconut, can use almond flour. Okay, there's 1 cup and then a quarter cup. So 1 1/4. You can just eyeball the quarter cup, okay? This is not rocket science. This is why we're doing home cooking, and it's not going to be too crazy with these specific measurements. So now you're just going to use your spatula, and you're going to mix it all up. Okay, great. So now it's gonna look like a little bit of a cookie dough, okay? And that's exactly what we want to look like. And we're gonna set it aside and we're gonna prep our little ramekins or our tart shell. So if you have like a muffin tin, you can use this. If you don't, you can also use some ramekins that you have, like a sauce little ramekin. Or if you go to pastry shops or baking shops, they have these cute little shells, like tart shells that you can buy. And these are great. So either one, you can use a muffin tin, you can use a sauce ramekin, or one of these tart shells. So I'm going to use this tart shells because it's more of the traditional way of making tarts, okay? So I'm just going to do 4. This recipe will probably give you way more than 4. I'll probably give you 8 to 10. But I am going to just show you 4. So with a little bit of oil, you want to oil the bottom of these shells. And you want to be quite generous with getting the oil all into the little grooves because there's all these ripples in the shells, and you want the tarts to come out quite easily. Okay. Now you like to use a pastry brush or basting brush, or you can use a paper towel if you want to. All right. So about a teaspoon will get you about 4 ramekins all greased up. So the recipe that I've given you here will be about 8 different shells. There's a little bit more here, so I'm just going to do one more. Okay, great. Okay, now that all these are prepped, we can go ahead and grab the batter or the dough that we've created, but with the dates, the water, the oil, and the coconut and almond flour. And then you're just going to use your hands to mush it together. Okay. And you don't need the spatula anymore. I'm just going to stick it aside. Okay. So you're going to create a dough ball. And you're going to divide this dough ball into about 8 pieces. Just with your hands, and then slowly grab that one piece and start rolling it into a ball, okay? Once it becomes a ball, you flatten it, okay? And once you flatten it, you can stick it into your ramekin and start pressing it on towards the bottom, okay? So you don't want a thick shell, right? You want a thin shell. And then you do want the shell to come over the lip because when you're baking it, you don't want it to shrink too much. All right. So if you guys can see me, I'm going to come a little bit closer to the camera. This is what I've been doing with the tart shell. And you want it to have a little bit of a lip so it kind of hangs off the top of the shell. And you want to give it a little bit of patience to do this. So you'll end up with really nice tart shells at the end. All right, so see some people are just joining us. You can rewind this video and replay it from the beginning to start off with the ingredients and the introduction. Okay. This one, the first one is done. Ta-da! I'm going to go on to my second one. I'm going to put it aside. Now we're going to go on to our second one. Just the same process. So you roll it into a ball, then you flatten it, and then now you can put it in the ramekin and press it flat. And slowly press it all down and thin the pastry out. All right, so as I said, you want to kind of have it lift off the lip of the top of the ramekin, so when it bakes, it sort of hangs off the side so it doesn't shrink into the middle. All right, our second one is done. Put that up here so you guys can see. This is kind of therapeutic. You can do this with kids or friends when they come over, hang out. Tart shells are always fun to make beforehand, and you can keep them around. You can eat them like cookies, or you even have to fill them if you don't want to. All right, so we're going to pre-bake these for about 8 to 10 minutes, and we're going to take it out and we're going to fill the filling. So now we're going to do the filling after we put these in the oven. All right. Cool. I'm going to do a few more, so just 2 more. You don't even have to roll it out, just kind of all press it all down too. But I like rolling it just because, you know, it makes a nicer circular disc, so you know exactly how much dough gets in. But we're not going to be too fussy here. All right. And just one more. Now we can put this in the oven at 200 degrees Celsius, so that's about like 380 Fahrenheit. Okay. And then our last one. And if you have extra of the dough, you can always make little cookies with it, so you don't actually have to also make all of it in tart form. But for the egg tarts, yeah, this is the best way to do it. You don't have to also do egg tarts. You can do like little fruit tarts also. Just add some pudding inside. We taught you guys a chia seed pudding a few weeks ago. with my granola tart shell. You can also do that with this tart shell. And today we're going to do a filling that looks like egg, but it's not. So we're using some mung beans and some either almond milk, coconut milk, or oat milk, depends on what type of plant-based milk you guys have at home. You guys can bring that out. And then a little tapioca starch or a little psyllium husk. It depends on what you have. I like to use a lot of soluble fiber in my cooking, so I will add some psyllium husk to my filling. But tapioca starch will suffice. Or if you don't have tapioca starch, you can use arrowroot starch or some cornstarch or some potato starch, and those will work fine too. All right, so I have 5 tart shells. I'm gonna save this for cookies later, and I'll put it in the oven. I already have a tray in the oven, so I'm just gonna put them one by one on that tray. I will show you guys after I put in all 5 of my tart shells. Okay. One more time in the oven. See, that's really nice. And then I'm going to close the oven door for about 10 minutes. I'm going to set my timer for, I'm going to do 8 minutes because there's only 5 and there's supposed to be about 8 to 10, right? So let's just do 8 minutes because now we can do the tart shell. All right. I mean, not tart shell, the tart filling. So we have some mung beans here. Mung beans are usually yellow. They're also green too. So green is actually the peel on the outside, and in Chinese it's called green beans, but the inside is actually yellow. So these are peeled mung beans. You can buy them in your local grocery store. They're pretty common. And then you want to put them in a sauce pot. So I have about half a cup of mung beans in my sauce pot. And then I also have about a cup and a half of water. All right, so I'm going to put that. So I washed the mung beans already. I'm going to put that in my burner. I'm going to turn it on. And we're going to allow it to boil for about 5 minutes. Okay, so once the pot is on the burner with the mung beans, we're just going to turn it on. So that you should wash the mung beans, just rinse it a little bit. Half a cup goes in the sauce pot, and then about a cup and a half of water, bring it to boil. Once it boils, it's ready to be blended. So once again, like, you don't need to throw away your blender. Not throw away, clean your blender. You can keep it for the mung bean when we are ready to blend it. So now we can also get out our either almond milk or coconut milk or oat milk, whatever you have in your home. And then also about like also another cup of dates. So it depends on if we're going to fill the whole thing. So right now we're just going to do 5 out of the 8 tart shells. So I'm going to kind of use, change my recipe a little bit in the ones that I've emailed you to be half of what I'm doing, right? So I'm going to use about 6 dates. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The recipe that I've sent out has about 12 dates. And then about 1 can of coconut milk, which is going to be half a can of coconut milk here. Instead, I'm going to use a little bit of oat milk today. So this is about 175 milliliters of oat milk. That goes in here. And then we also have some turmeric, okay? So you want to put about half a teaspoon of turmeric. Turmeric turns this recipe yellow. Not just the mung beans, but the turmeric makes a big difference. And then now you can put in your tapioca starch. I'm going to put in about 1 teaspoon of tapioca starch. Okay, that's it. So now it's also time that you can use some soluble fiber. I'm going to get some psyllium husk, and we're going to also mix that into our mixture. So for the psyllium husk, you don't need a lot. So I'm just going to put about half a teaspoon of psyllium husk in here. Then I hear the mung bean kind of boiling. So we're waiting for the mung beans to boil. And once it boils, it should be ready. You don't really need to cook them through because we're also going to be baking them, right? So I can also just blend the dates a little bit first, but there's no hurry, so we're just going to wait for the mung beans. And for the blender, you can either use your Vitamix, your blender, your food processor, or you can use the magic bullet. It depends on what you want. And then for this one, I mean, the dates are going to be the sweetener, but you can switch that up too. So if you don't want to use sugar, you can use either apricots or raisins or any type of dried fruits that don't have too dark of a color, right? I wouldn't go with like raisins or blueberries because they're just going to change the filling into a darker color and you won't really see the yellow. So dates is probably the darkest I would go for dried fruits, or you can use an apple if you want to. I mean, just because I don't use sugar doesn't mean you don't have to use sugar. So that's already boiled. I'm going to take it off the heat. And then you just want to pour out the water. You don't need the water. In here. I like to use mung beans because it's got a really nice distinct flavor. So after it's cooked, it looks like this. And then now you can put it all in to the blender. All right. That's done. Blender. And then you do want the dates to also be as broken down as possible. So now you're going to look for a strainer. Okay, so once you get the strainer, you can go and chart on your chart shell, and they look quite nice and brown. So go get ahead and grab some oven mitts and bring them out of the oven. All right, so these are what my tart shells look like after 8 minutes. And then I'm going to set the timer to be off. Keep the oven on though. You do not want to turn the oven off. So now we're also done with all our ingredients. Set it aside. Tart shells are ready to be filled. with our filling. I'm gonna turn get this off. Okay, so our filling looks pretty thick. So at the end, you can add a little bit more of that mung bean water, and you can, oops, my timer. Okay, there we go. And then what you want to do is spread that around. And you want it to be quite liquidy when you put it into the, I didn't use all the water because I know this is a food processor and the water will spray everywhere. So if you have a blender, go ahead and put all the water in your mung beans into the blender. Okay. So now that our batter looks quite nice, you can strain it through your strainer. And then slowly mix it in. And then once you fill in all your tarts, you can stick it inside the oven again, the same temperature, for another 10 minutes. And then you want to turn it off, okay? Because it's still going to be runny. You want to let it cool for 5 to 10 minutes before you serve it. Okay. I'm going to use a ladle. It's going to be a little bit easier for this process. There we go. And the mung beans give this batter some protein. The starch helps the liquid get a little bit more solid when you cook it because it gels. And then the fiber gives a lot of fiber into this mixture. And it becomes all of a sudden a healthier egg tart without eggs and sugar. And then after you drain out just the liquid, you can use the pulp also to cook your oatmeal. You can also use the pulp in soup. You can also use the pulp for dessert or even cookies. Okay. And just 2 more to go. We're going to plop this back into the oven for about 10 more minutes. And the important part is to have patience. So you can't really eat it right away, or else it doesn't have time to set. You can always pop it in the fridge too and eat it cold. But I love it right after it comes out of the oven, and after 10 minutes of waiting. It's the perfect temperature. You won't burn your mouth or your tongue. And I think it's the perfect vegan snack or dessert. Okay, one last one. And we are done. Just because these are a little bit smaller, it doesn't even have to be 10 minutes. I will gauge by keeping an eye on the oven. And after I put this in the oven, we can reiterate some of the ingredients. And you can also try this at home in your own time, or you can rewind this video and do it with me at the same time. Okay, so all of it is done now. We can take it and slowly bring this to the oven. Because it's liquid, you want to do this quite slowly. Make sure that it doesn't tip over. Okay, so this should be it's not hot anymore. So you see my egg tarts, they're perfectly yellow and they just need to be cooked. I'm going to set the timer for 10 minutes. All right. And we can reiterate some of the ingredients that we used. So for the tart shell, we have almond flour, and then we blended some dates, so half a cup of dates with a 1/4 cup of water and a 1/4 cup of cooking oil. So the oil doesn't really matter, whatever type of oil you have at home. We're not baking it at too high of a temperature. We're not deep frying, we're not pan searing, so you can even use olive oil. I used grapeseed oil with a little bit of flaxseed oil, because flaxseed oil is a little bit more yellow. And then a pinch of salt. So we blended that dates, a little bit of salt, water, and oil in a blender. And then we put it in a mixing bowl, and we added 1.5 cups of either almond flour or coconut flour, or you can mix both together if you want, half and half. And then we made a dough like this one. So then we divided the dough into about 8 pieces. And then we got these ramekins, and then we put oil in the ramekins to grease them up, so then the tart shell will lift easier. If you don't have these guys, you can use like a sauce plate like this, or a muffin tin like this. And you can also line it with some muffin liners too, if you wish. And what we did after we oiled the little tart shells up, we made a little round ball, and then we smushed it, and then we pushed it down on this shell into quite a thin layer, making sure that the top comes off a little bit and hangs around the side of the ramekin, and then we put them all into the oven for about 8 to 10 minutes. You want to keep an eye on it, it doesn't get too dark, and then pull it out of the oven. And then what we did for the filling was, for the mung beans, we cooked them on the stove. So a half a cup of mung beans with a cup and a half of water. And then we blended it with about 6 dates. And then we added a teaspoon of tapioca starch. And then a little bit, like a half a teaspoon of psyllium husk. And also a little bit of turmeric. So turmeric is also an anti-inflammatory agent, and it's really good for decreasing inflammation in your body. And we added about 175 milliliters of oat milk. And then we blended it with the cooked mung beans. So the mung beans only really needed to come to a boil. So make sure you wash the mung beans before you boil them. After it boils, you can put it in a blender with all the water. If you're doing it with like a handheld blender like mine, make sure there's not too much liquid, and then you can add in the liquid afterwards, right? So it doesn't spray everywhere. So after that, it becomes a liquid like this, and there is a lot of pulp in the bottom. So what I've done is I passed the liquid through a sieve with my small spatula directly onto the tart shell. And then once I filled in all the tart shell, I put it in the oven, and now it's baking and needs another, I think, 5 minutes, and we are going to turn it off and let the tarts rest for at least 10 minutes before you eat it, or else it's not going to be set. It's still going to be quite watery. So let it set. 10 minutes later, you can serve it, and you can also, save. You don't finish it, you can save it in the refrigerator. You can also put it in the microwave or the toaster oven and heat it back up, and they last about 2 to 3 days in the refrigerator. So that's all we have today. If you guys have any more questions, you can also put that in the comment. I will take a look at that right after I turn off the oven, and I will try to answer you guys as much to my knowledge as possible. And yeah, feel free to keep following us on Instagram or Facebook. We'll have more of these similar vegan, gluten-free, and sugarless classes coming out. And yeah, thanks for joining us today. I'm going to take a look at our tarts right now. There should be another 3 minutes left. It looks pretty good. You can check it out from the outside. You can see, and there's about 3 more minutes left over. We can have a little bit of a peek. Yay! And then that's it. Basically, they're ready to eat after 3 minutes. Just make sure you rest them for 10 minutes, or else it's just going to still stay liquidy. And I hope you guys enjoy this recipe. You can substitute out the starches with either cornstarch, tapioca starch, potato starch. You don't even have to use psyllium husk if you don't have it. I just like to add more fiber to all the recipes that I teach. And the different flours, so for the tart shell, you don't have to use almond flour. You can use coconut flour or any type of gluten-free blend flour as you wish. And the milk also can be interchanged. If you don't have oat milk, you can use coconut milk, or you can use almond milk. And if you are not vegan, you don't have to use plant-based milk. You can use regular milk. And that's all. Thanks for joining us. I am Renee, and I hope you guys have a wonderful afternoon. And hopefully you'll come and meet me at one of our summer farmers markets around town. We're usually in Coquitlam Farmers Market. We are in Brentwood Artisan Farmers Market. We're at the UBC one. We're in the Kwantlen Farmers Market on Tuesday in Richmond. And sometimes you can see us in different pop-up virtual markets around town, as well as our online store. We will be launching our gluten-free dumpling flour very soon, so I'm very excited to share recipes with you on how to make gluten-free vegan dumplings, and I hope you guys stay tuned for more live Facebook classes coming up soon. All right, bye.